Coral reefs can be safely called the main highlight of the Red Sea. Like diamonds of underwater worlds, they shimmer with bright colors of their amazing flora and fauna. Fragile but abundant and harmonious, these ecosystems are home to countless fish and primitive animals, such as corals and sponges. There are about 200 species of soft and hard corals, but the most common are acropores, as well as warty Pocillopora and porites. These are the main reef corals responsible for creating a huge limestone structure that supports the thin living shell of the reef. The word Acropora comes from the Greek akron, which means top, and refers to the pyramidal shape of the tips of its branches. Under favorable conditions, they grow at a rate of up to 25 centimeters per year, which makes them one of the main restoring forces of the reef. Most species are highly branched, and some resemble deer antlers or trees, with sparse, fluffy branches. These corals are considered stony, as well as Pocillopora, covered with growths similar to warts. Pocillopora are also called shrubby or cauliflower corals. These two species inhabit almost the entire surface of the bottom and are found both in protected and open surf areas. Their coloration is entirely due to the color of algae symbionts living in the surface tissues of coral polyps. Against the background of the rest of the reef, the large-scale funnels of the table acropores stand out proudly. This coral grows outward like a table. Among these bottom organisms, there is also a sprawling Pharaoh's acropore, especially attractive for its symmetry and orderliness. Now it is listed in the Red Book as a vulnerable species due to the declining population. Porites are also active reef builders. Like the species described above, they are large colonies of tiny polyps. Microscopic primitive animals are located so tightly to each other that they merge into a solid mass, usually pale yellow, gray, green, or brown. As you approach the coral, it will look more and more porous, and then the hosts of the formation with 6 tentacles will appear, forming very massive streamlined shapes. Porites can resemble squat pillars, rounded lumpy boulders, or even huge helmets. The rate of their growth is very small, only 2 centimeters per year. Goniastrea, also known as star coral, has also chosen the seabed of the reef for itself. It is resistant to temperature changes and changes in the salinity of water. Whether it's 13 or even 31 degrees Celsius, Goniastrea will feel comfortable. The growth rate of this animal is low, but its adaptability can play a role in preserving damaged reefs. Like all stony corals, it most often hunts at night. Polyps stretch out from small nests dotting a hard pitted hummock to feed on zooplankton. By tightening their tentacles during the day, invertebrates help their algae mates get as much light as possible for photosynthesis of nutrients. Goniastrea grows on reef cliff, rocks, silted bottom, and in lagoons. Color varies from reddish-brown to grayish-green. A huge brain coral has settled in the reef area. Its impressive dimensions can exceed 4 meters in diameter, and its life expectancy is approaching the mark of 1,000 years. The coral is covered with sinuous grooves, similar to the folds of the human brain. Polyps hide in the maze of these grooves, hiding behind their tentacles to protect themselves from fish in the daytime. With their small hands, polyps can not only grab and defend themselves, but also clean the surface around them. The color of brain cells is dominated by brown, with shades of yellow, gray, and green. For all its charm and velvety texture, the coral's fluted body produces toxins that are poisonous to humans. By the way, you can find the world's largest colony of brain coral on the Kelliston Drain Dive Site in the Caribbean. Like buds, yellow disc-shaped Turbinaria flowers open on the reef. They grow in plates and discs, which are layered on top of each other, forming multi-level structures. Their leaf-like shape is aimed at absorbing as much light as possible. Curved, folded coral sheets indicate the predominance of strong currents in the animal's habitat. As a rule, the tiny cups in which the polyps sit are located only on one side of the petals of the Turbinaria. In this case, they are tubular raised mounds protruding above the wavy plates. Turbinaria feel good in muddy water and are resistant to heavy precipitation. They can completely cleanse themselves of sediments within a few hours, simultaneously feeding on organic substances present in the sediments. Growing to an impressive size, mature colonies of Turbinaria serve as shelters for reef fish and vertebrates, and even contribute to the growth of other coral species. Here is the dangerous beauty of Millipore. It forms fan-shaped colonies of mustard or olive yellow color. It may resemble a flat limestone shrub with white tips or a group of erect, thin plates. Perhaps the most interesting thing about this marine organism is its structure. There are 2 different types of polyps living in its colonies. Dactylozoids, protectors armed to the teeth with stinging cells, and gastrozoids responsible for reproduction and digestion of food. Millipore belongs to the hydroid class and is not a coral, although they are similar in their physical characteristics. A more common name for this creature is fiery or burning coral. A close acquaintance with the fiery coral will turn into a strong and painful burn, as if you touched a red-hot iron. Loss of consciousness due to pain shock can cost the life of a diver at depth. Every year, more than 1,500 people are injured from contact with millipore, which leads to the formation of scars for life. This coral of amazing beauty belongs to the genus Anella. Among its representatives, there are very large fan colonies with a branch span of up to 2 meters. They unfold their branching lace perpendicular to the current, seeding nutritious plankton from the surrounding seawater. Like huge filters, fan corals perform the function of purification facilities in the Red Sea. During the life of the animal, flat Anella trees can bend to form graceful waves and bowls. Live sea fans have a warm monochrome color from orange yellow to brown red, and a soft, spongy fabric structure. The largest specimens are found at a depth of about 40 meters. But as a rule, Anella lives no deeper than 10 to 35 meters, preferring reef slopes and depressions subject to strong currents. Lush sea lilies, Crinoidea, often choose this soft coral as the basis for their growth. Sprawling networks of branches produce compounds that repel predators, which makes them an excellent refuge for many fish. Anella reaches its impressive size very slowly, so divers should be careful not to damage this charm. The steep cliffs of coral reefs are decorated with amazing creatures called Nephtheidae. The tree-like shape, refined, flexible branches, and tiny, bright polyps at their tips create a magnificent, almost fantastic image. Deep-sea Nephtheidae are probably one of the prettiest soft corals. During the daytime, their polyps are retracted, forming small bumps at the end of the processes, which gives these creatures a resemblance to broccoli. At night, when the shooters get out of their hiding places, the coral trees seem to bloom, showing a wide range of saturated and pastel colors, including red, pink, yellow, and purple. By the way, individuals inhabiting caves or deep waters of outer reefs do not cooperate with algae and feed only on phytoplankton. As for the healing properties, soft corals always have something to surprise us with. Studies have shown that Turbinaria produce thousands of medicinal compounds that act as antibiotics and anti-inflammatory agents. But in 2022, scientists from the University of Utah managed to make a breakthrough discovery. It turned out that these bottom organisms generate a special protective compound, eleutherin, which can treat cancer. Fortunately, coral extraction is not required to obtain it. Eleutherin is successfully recreated in the laboratory according to the instructions contained in the genetic code of the coral. Tree-like lithophyton, also known as broccoli coral, is widely distributed among the Nephtheidae. Despite the vegetable nickname, many people associate it with silver wattle, the color of which varies from pale olive to yellow or gray. As the wind stirs the grass on land, so the sea currents are agitated by the powerful, thick branches of the lithophyton. Absorbing the passing plankton and the products of photosynthesis occurring in its tissues, it grows to 60 to 80 centimeters. Protecting itself from various marine bacteria living in the environment, the broccoli coral armed itself with the organic molecule lithofarabol. Isolated by scientists in 2018, it also has direct application in medicine, fighting microbes in the human body. Unlike slightly toxic Nephtheidae, this animal is poisonous and releases about 50 different toxic elements into the water. We are talking about the toadstool leather coral sarcophyton. Its appearance strongly resembles a mushroom with a thick leg and a funnel-shaped cap with wavy edges. In the tropical waters of the Pacific and Indian Oceans, there are individuals whose caps exceed 1 meter in diameter. The surface of the sarcophyton is dotted with a carpet of small polyps up to 1 centimeter long. The latter are divided into 2 types: autozoids, large feeding polyps, and siphonozoids, which remain below the surface and are responsible for the circulation of water in the colony. They look like tiny depressions or mounds lost among the higher autozoa. During rest or danger, all polyps are completely drawn into the invertebrate body. Being a soft coral, the sarcophyton is mobile and can even change its shape when waking up and falling asleep. But it was not called leathery because of its plasticity, but for a completely different reason. Once a month, for about 2 to 3 days, all leathery corals shed their mucous membrane, thereby cleansing themselves of accumulated contaminants and bacteria. In addition, sarcophyton most often has a cream, red, or brown color of pastel tones. It is not surprising that with the polyps removed, his tissues very much resemble reddish-brown skin. Despite their apparent fragility, leathery corals are quite hardy and are often pioneers of reef species, although they still have their own preferences in the form of relatively slow currents. Among the numerous cnidarians at the bottom of the Red Sea, you can find the most primitive animal on Earth. Along with trichoplax adherents, sea sponges, porifera, do not have real tissues and organs. The cells in their body are united into different groups or layers, having different structures and functions. Additionally, it is the specialization of cells that a creature needs in order to be considered an animal. A distinctive feature of sponges is also the ability of their cells to move freely around the body, which is necessary to optimize the flow of water in the sponge as it grows, or due to changes in the environment. As you might guess, these invertebrates feed by absorbing and filtering seawater. Algae and corals on the reef produce a lot of organic material that is filtered by sponges. The latter turn it into small particles absorbed by the same algae and corals. Many marine species feed on sponges themselves, but primitive animals quickly recover, taking the most exotic forms, up to curved pipes, barrels, or miniature castles with pointed towers. These bottom organisms live for a very long time, up to 200 years or more, and the age of their remains dates back to 650 to 800 million years. As an example of symbiosis, we can cite the relationship of sponges with some crabs. Using their unattractiveness to predators, crustaceans carry pieces of sponges on themselves, gradually accreting them to their shell. People have also used these bizarre creatures extensively in their lives, whether it was a helmet lining, a portable drinking vessel, a city water filter, or a tool for applying paint and glaze. The sponges performed their tasks properly. However, due to excessive fishing, by the middle of the 20th century, marine inhabitants and the whole industry associated with them were on the verge of extinction, and man had to invent all these devices on his own. The coral reefs of the Red Sea are literally teeming with life. The bright, almost dapper coloring of the local fauna turns the seabed into a fascinating sight, even for the seasoned tourist. This amazing world is fraught with many stories about the customs and unique abilities of the inhabitants who adorn its waters. One of these stories tells about two inseparable creatures, a clownfish and an anemone, Actinia. Their relationship is a wonderful example of symbiosis often found on reefs. Once stung by the poisonous tentacles of an anemone, the clownfish accurately reproduces the composition of the poisonous mucus covering a huge coral polyp. Predators try to avoid contact with the stinging cells of the sea anemone, and the clown can feel safe hiding in the translucent body of its roommate. Amphiprions, as these fish are also called, constantly take care of their defender. They clean up the remains of food, provide water circulation, and clean the leg of the anemone. Also, as payment for the shelter, the polyps get the remains of the clown's meal, feeding on algae and zooplankton, which float downstream through the islets of anemones. One of the curious features of these fish is the ability to make sounds, such as clicking, grumbling, and many others. But according to the content, they are mainly divided into two groups, aggressive and subordinate. In 2003, the clown was chosen by Pixar Animation Studios as the main character for the cartoon Finding Nemo. The film describes dramatic events from the family life of these spectacular inhabitants of the sea. But for at least two reasons, these events are far from reality. Firstly, the amphiprion rarely leaves anemone in search of food and never swims far from its poisonous refuge. And a gray-haired clown can even get into the mouth of his anemone to hide from danger. Accordingly, long-distance travel is out of the question. Secondly, only the mother could go in search of the baby, but not Nemo's father. Moreover, at the beginning of her life, she was male, It seems that we have completely confused you. All this may seem incredible and confusing, but let's explain everything in order. As a rule, clownfish live in groups, mainly consisting of males. At the head of the group are the largest dominant male and female, who are responsible for procreation. The dominant pair itself, as well as the entire pack, is usually led by a female, bolder and more aggressive than her partner. Driving courtship, the leader of the pack often bites his beau by the fins, as if reminding him who is in charge of the house. Naturally, with such a character, caring for offspring is more suitable for the father of the family than for the newly made mother. The clown dad carefully fans the caviar with his fins, saturating it with oxygen. In just 6 days, the eggs develop into cute fry and exclusively male. Female individuals appear in the pack only by transformation. It is obvious that in the event of the death of the male producer, his place is taken by the largest of the young amphiprions. But if a female dies, then her spouse changes gender to female and chooses the largest male individual for himself to create a new pair. Interestingly, in the presence of elders, all other members of the pack restrain their growth, significantly inferior to the leaders in size, apparently so that the main one does not get jealous of his girlfriend to young clowns. But as soon as the parent pair breaks up and each of them has a chance to dominate, the whole shoal resumes its growth in the hope of becoming the chosen ones. But the competitive struggle in the life of clowns does not end there. Their main battle is for their favorite sea anemones. Even when there are enough polyps, the fish can fight for the ones they like the most. It was the territorial skirmishes that caused the catchy, memorable appearance of the animal. The clown needs to declare his presence on the selected anemone, and here he is quite serious. Its typical color is considered orange-white, but in fact, Amphiprion can be blue, yellow, red, or even black, depending on the area of distribution. After the successful rental of the movie In Search of Nemo, the clownfish became very popular among aquarists. And although most of the future pets are raised on farms, many individuals are collected in the wild for subsequent sale on the marine aquarium market. The massive catch of amphiprions has affected the lives of sea anemones, which become completely helpless without their tenants. By the way, it is the sea anemones that disappear first when the reef begins to die for whatever reason. Dangerous and vulnerable at the same time, anemones itself is a quite interesting creature. It belongs to skeletal coral polyps, and among its relatives are jellyfish and hydra. Poisonous tentacles serve these animals as an instrument of attack and a means of protection. At their tips, there is a cluster of stinging cells that shoot thin, poisonous threads. In addition to the presence of danger or the approach of prey, soft tentacles can change their color. The tentacles covered with algae indicate the good health of the animal. Relaxed ones indicate a certain degree of satiety, and tense and elongated ones indicate that the marine predator is hungry. A movable carpet of tentacles hides the orange disc. Large anemones feed on both small invertebrates, such as mollusks and crustaceans, and small fish. Despite the toxicity, the anemone itself may well become a victim of larger fish, a starfish, a worm, or a sea spider. Disturbed, the huge polyp shrinks into a ball, showing its bright, leathery underside. Unable to get inside, worried clowns will rush around the closed doors of their house, unsuccessfully trying to squeeze in between tightly clenched tentacles. Curiously, amphiprions are not the only ones who use this as a living shelter. Shrimp and crabs, being in close proximity to the stinging cells, also receive the necessary protection from the predatory marine environment. Other crabs and hermit crabs carry anemones on their shells for safety reasons. But perhaps the most unexpected fact about anemones was their ability to move. You can't tell from the look of it, but these fantastic animals can not only crawl on the bottom, but also swim short distances. Some species cling to the ground with their mouths to move their feet to a new place. Others fall on their sides and crawl like worms, shortening their elongated body. And still others move only the soul, alternately tearing off its different sections from the ground. Without wasting time, polyps can clone themselves by discarding pieces of the petal disc, which then develop into new clonal individuals. This method of reproduction justifies itself because from that moment, the parent is surrounded by numerous budding children, and the lost parts of the body can be easily restored with the help of regeneration. Amphiprion is far from the most prominent red fish in the Red Sea Carnival. Outstanding for its diversity, the family of bristlemouths, cyclothone, or butterfly fish, Chaetodon fasciitis, includes about 10 genera and 130 species. Its representatives shine in all tropical waters of the earth, although some species are endemic to the Red Sea. The largest of them reaches 30 centimeters in length, or the size of a large dinner plate. All kinds of patterns and color combinations on the bodies of the bristlemouths have found their expression in a variety of names. In this film, you'll be able to see crowned, diagonal, black-tailed, and masked butterfly fish, as well as hooded butterfly fish, linear, pennant, chevron, and thread-finned. The continuous dorsal fins and the laterally flattened body give them an additional resemblance to the eponymous terrestrial insects. This shape allows the bristlemouths to deftly maneuver in reef labyrinths and gives a certain grace of movement, particular only to flat-bodied fish. Impressive coloring, in turn, serves the purposes of communication and protection. On the one hand, it misleads predators. Bright spots, stripes, and lines create the illusion of shapelessness, a double-headed, or even a broken body. On the other hand, it helps butterflies to recognize each other, to determine the difference between young and adult individuals, as well as to declare their presence on the developed area of the reef. These marine animals will actively drive their relatives from their territory, unless, of course, the latter are not part of their shoal. Bristlemouth fish are diurnal. Daylight hours are usually devoted to exploring their possessions or searching for food. At night, the butterflies hide in the crevices of the reefs and change color to a darker one. In the relationships of this family, there is a tendency to monogamy. They prefer long-term partners with whom they hunt, live, and travel together, sometimes throughout their lives. A lonely swimming butterfly fish is usually in search of a mate. However, many species have the opportunity to choose between collective, solitary, and paired existence. The young are generally more sociable and friendly than the older generation and prefer large companies. In adulthood, the tendency to form shoals is more often manifested in species that feed on plankton. Bristlemouths eat invertebrates, algae, fish eggs, and even parasites from the skin of larger fish. The menu of these lovely animals may differ, but coral polyps are the main food, which turned out to be a serious threat to their growth. At the same time, a large number of butterfly fish is a sign of good reef health. Not being poisonous, the bristlemouths become victims of local predators, such as Moray eels or sharks. At the moment, most species of this family are threatened with extinction due to global warming and reef damage. Incredible combinations of the brightest colors make up the pretentious coloring of another attractive family of marine fish. Alternating stripes on the body of the royal angelfish, Pterophyllum, may well cause ripples in the eyes. This species is one of the few safe for reefs because its diet consists of sponges and shells and does not include corals. But in general, the food of angelfish is a wide palette, from algae to small animals. Young and sometimes adult individuals can also clean larger neighbors on the reef from ectoparasites. Before the procedure, the angels demonstrate a characteristic dance to their clients, and during the cleaning, they touch them with their pectoral fins. The greatest interest in these animals is the difference in appearance between young and mature individuals. The imperial angel is a vivid example of this. The difference in color is so great that the younger generation of emperors was previously considered a separate species. Unlike the royal person in this frame, his descendants will have blue-black bodies marked with curved white and blue lines until they reach the length of 8 to 12 centimeters. Thus, they'll be able to live comfortably on the territory of adults, remaining out of competition. Calm by nature, and even a little shy angelfish, they show obvious hostility toward their relatives. When they see an opponent or some kind of threat, representatives of the pomacant family make loud knocking sounds. These elegant sea creatures never form large clusters. Depending on the species, they can lead a solitary lifestyle, create couples, or harems. In the event of the death of a male, nature has endowed angels with the ability to change sex from female to male. On the reefs, they always have a clear habitat, which they defend from rivals. As a shelter and a place to sleep, these fish use a system of grottos or cave halls connected by passages. Their innate stamina has made them very popular in the aquarium trade. And the largest species, reaching 60 centimeters in length, are still used as food fish, especially in Southeast Asia. But for the most part, angelfish populations remain stable. Coral reef is not only grace and rainbow colors, but also menace, strength, and uneasy character. These qualities are fully possessed by giant Moray eels of the Red Sea. For many people, the sight of a Moray eel makes an intimidating impression. The image of an unkind beast is created due to the snake's shape, gloomy coloring, staring white eyes, and huge mouth dotted with sharp teeth, which the fish constantly opens. Add to this the weight and size of a giant Moray eel, reaching 30 kilograms and 3 meters respectively. The overall picture can be completed with 2 pairs of jaws and nostrils, and the absence of a tongue. In short, an ideal candidate for the role of a monster in some ancient legend. But there is a reason for everything in nature. The Moray eel spends most of its life in shelters, being placed in them entirely due to its serpentine shape. It can hide inside large sponges, in coral thickets, or in crevices of underwater rocks, leaving only its head outside for a better view. Tight shelters make it difficult for oxygen-enriched water to flow to the gills, which forces the fish to independently provide flow by opening and closing their mouths. Since she does this all the time, the mouth of the Moray eel is covered with the same pattern as the skin, due to which the open mouth does not stand out against the background of the mottled reef. The standing gaze of the beast is explained by long waits in ambush and simply weak eyesight, which is more than compensated by an excellent sense of smell. The Moray eel's nose is 4 times superior to a dog's, and the grip is comparable to a bulldog's. Unlike most fish, it does not suck in prey, but uses a hidden pair of throat jaws to drag the victim into the esophagus. When the catch gets into the mouth, the second pair of jaws moves forward, as if another snake jumped out of one. The bite of the Moray eel is very painful and tenacious due to the canine teeth bent inside the mouth. Elongated nasal tubes, similar to polycate worms, help the animal to lure prey to the ambush site. As soon as 2 pairs of nostrils have smelled potential food, the predator breaks out of its shelter with an arrow and grabs the victim floating by. A very thick layer of mucus covering the body of the Moray eel not only protects the animal from germs and mechanical damage, but also provides a quick glide in the water. Its menu includes small fish, crustaceans, and the largest mollusks. In the local ecosystem, giant Moray eels are at the top of the food pyramid and even attack reef sharks. Being a perfect hunter and predator, this animal is rarely attacked by other fish. It is almost always safe and can live for about 36 years, thanks to its power, poisonous mucus on the skin, and excellent ability to hide. Moray eels prefer a closed, solitary lifestyle and adhere to permanent habitats. But if convenient shelters are located nearby, predators can become neighbors. But they are unlikely to become friends or help each other. It may seem to a person that the appearance of a snake-like creature does not encourage cooperation at all, but coral trout and sea bass, they think differently. As a rule, the moray eel goes fishing at night, but for joint hunting with perch or grouper, it is ready to make exceptions. Inviting him to go after the prey, he swims close to his short-sighted companion and quickly shakes his head. Sometimes it can look like a meeting, communication, or mutual touching. If the moray eel is hungry, it gets out of its burrow and, regardless of the daytime, leaves its shelter side by side with its partner. The perch leads her to the place where the victim was hidden, and with some shaking of the head, indicates her location. Wriggling with a ribbon, the predator dives into a narrow space and expels or eats a jointly obtained lunch. Since both fish are used to swallowing the whole caught, they cannot share their trophy and are content with the catch in turn from hunt to hunt. The most interesting thing is that the participants of this tandem never conflict, because the efficiency of fishing increases 5-fold for the grouper and even more for the moray eel. No less surprising is the partnership of the giant huntress and the fish cleaners. Moray eels never attack cleaner wrasses, as well as shrimp nurses, quite often found on the body of the animal. Dr. Wrasses knows all the fish on the reef as an ambulance for ectoparasites. The bright black stripes on its sides in the underwater kingdom mean the same as the Red Cross in the human world. Working in pairs, agile orderlies clean the moray eel from parasites, food residues, and dead pieces of skin. Wanting to complete this procedure, the predator begins to push the sponge out of the mouth or closes it for a few seconds. If necessary, to get rid of everything superfluous, she will independently look for the little doctor. If several fish come to the doctor's appointment and a queue is formed, the moray eel will never touch the other patients. The nature of this sea creature is an extraordinary mixture of static and lightning speed, timidity and aggression, isolation and sociability. In case of pursuit, it tries to hide, but when cornered or caught on a hook, the animal will fight furiously until its last breath. To escape from the chase or to find a way out to sea, the huntress is able to overcome a small piece of land thanks to her developed muscular system. In ancient Rome, these fish were deliberately trained to perceive a person as a victim. The punishment fatal to slaves was called ad morenas, that is, to the moray eels. All these factors have contributed to the negative reputation of the predator as the most ferocious and hardy representative of her family. If you're careful and prudent during diving, this beast is unlikely to feel threatened by you. A friendly and tactful observer will even be able to touch the moray eel, provided there is a treat and some habit to the diver. But no matter how smoothly your relationship develops, do not forget that in front of you is one of the most dangerous predators on the planet. Spreading its oval disc, a large as round ribbon-tail ray hovers over the reef, like a giant underwater bird. In these places, the bottom is covered with soft, light sand, hiding a lot of potential prey. As the closest relatives of sharks, stingrays, or Daciaidae, lack a swim bladder and must constantly make efforts not to sink to the bottom. On their belly, often hidden from prying eyes, there are nostrils, mouth, and gill slits. Since stingrays often rest and hunt on the bottom, they cannot breathe with their gills located on their stomachs. For inhalation, additional holes are used called splashers, which are located directly behind the eyes. When they close, exhalation occurs through the gills from below. But if the latter are covered with sand, then the sprinklers are used both for water intake and for pushing it out. Tails like to burrow into the ground, leaving only their eyes and tail on the surface. But unlike Moray eels, they do not seek to catch prey by surprise, but rather disguise themselves from a predator. In order not to become a dinner for something bigger, like a shark or a dolphin, stingrays breathe so quietly that the movement of the ground around their body is almost not noticeable. Most of the day they remain motionless, lying under reefs, in caves, and other secluded places. The main activity occurs at night, when the tailgaters go out on a single or group hunt. Following the tide to the sandbanks, they catch crustaceans, mollusks, worms, and small vertebrates hidden in the bottom sediments. The flat bodies of these cartilaginous fish make it easier to catch in stormy tidal waters, allowing them to snuggle tightly to the bottom. At low tide, fishing groups break up, and each stingray goes to its shelter on the reef. The nutrition of the shank is largely due to its specific shape. Having found potential food, the animal covers it with its body and presses the edges of the disc to the ground, excluding the escape of the victim. With the help of splashers, it draws in water and forcefully releases it through its mouth, washing out its prey from the sediments. Small fish and invertebrates caught in the mouth are ground by particular teeth of a stingray. More like a grater or a washboard, they turned out to be modified plates of scales that are constantly changing, just like sharks. From the outside, the whole process resembles rather funny slaps on the sand, rather than an impressive hunting of a marine predator. But some fish, such as cobias, horse mackerels, or mollidae, have quite serious benefits from tail breakers, using them as a cover to sneak up on their own victim, or picking up the remains of a meal. In search of food, stingrays rely on their sense of smell and electrical sensitivity, and do not use their eyesight at all. You probably guessed why. Ampules of Lorenzini, a special sensory organ responsible for electroreception, help animals determine the location of prey. The impulses to which the organ reacts are created by nerve conduction and muscle contractions of the victim. In addition, the electric fields of different animal species differ from each other, which makes it easier to identify them. Ampules of Lorenzini are also used for recognizing relatives, orientation in space, and navigation based on electric fields created by the interaction of water flows and the Earth's magnetic field. At the same time, tailgaters cannot produce electrical discharges for self-defense or for stunning prey, so they are completely safe in this regard. One of the prominent representatives of the family is the blue-spotted ribbon-tail ray, which can be easily identified by the glowing blue spots scattered over the yellow-green body. Like all his relatives, the offspring of the ribbon-tail ray is finally formed in the womb of the mother to be born a miniature but exact copy of an adult ray. Even before birth, the prickly tails of the babies are enclosed in a leathery capsule so as not to injure the female. As soon as they get into the water, the rolled-up stingrays immediately straighten out, and the shell covering the tip of the tail dissolves within a day after going to sea. In general, these wonderful creatures produce much fewer offspring than bony fish or osteichthyes. And also, they grow and mature slowly, which makes them vulnerable to overfishing. The habit of tailgaters to hide in bottom sediments becomes a frequent cause of misunderstandings and accidents between these fish and humans. A frightened or enraged stingray pressed to the bottom by a person will immediately use the poisonous thorn crowning its tail. This weapon is designed to defend against a predator and works in the principle of a whip, easily piercing shoes or several layers of clothing. The tail stinger is regularly replaced with a new one, regardless of whether it was used or not. Poison entering an open wound causes pain, severe intoxication, and becomes extremely dangerous to a person if they are deep underwater. Sensing danger, the stingray lifts its tail above the disc and waves it back and forth, directing the sting towards the head like a scorpion. Many reef sharks carry fragments of tail fin spikes as mute evidence of past collisions. But the presence of a poisonous thorn should not mislead you about the nature of this animal, which is completely non-aggressive and even timid. When a larger creature approaches the stingray, it swims away or flees, moving at high speed and zigzags to throw the attacker off the trail. Thus, using the sting to attack will always be the last resort. If you are resting in the habitat of these extraordinary fish, then walking along the bottom, do not forget to shuffle your feet periodically. In the event that the meeting takes place at depth, try not to give the stingray the impression that he is being pushed to the reef or hanging over him. These measures will help to make your communication with the stingrays as comfortable as possible. If you want to pet, feed, and take a photo with an underwater bird, you'd better go to a place called Stingray City, or the City of Stingrays in the Caribbean. The experience of this ecotourism center shows that tailgaters are able to rebuild their lives under changed conditions. So regular feeding by tourists has formed their habit of resting at night, eating only in groups, and being much more tolerant of people. These fish are not as simple as they seem. They are graceful and clumsy at the same time, mostly timid, but sometimes curious. The image of a flying stingray symbolizes freedom, mystery, the ability to stand up for yourself, and adaptation. All these characteristics are quite applicable to stingrays. We hope that these beautiful creatures will surf the expanses of the ocean, free from any threats, for many, many years to come.